Let them speak. Patterns 16. Please repeat or answer. I say to him to go. I tell him to go. I ask him to go. Do you say to him to go? Did you say to him to go? Will you tell him to go? Don't you tell him to go? Didn't you ask him to go? Won't you ask him to go? Did she say to leave? Did he tell you to come? Didn't you ask her to come back? Won't she ask them to leave? Will you tell him to bring it? Didn't she say to take it? Will you ask him to teach that? Didn't you tell him to play? Didn't you say to stop it? Will you tell her to read it? Didn't he tell her to wait? Won't you ask him to fix it? What do you say to him to do? Where did you tell him to sleep? Why will you ask him to leave? When don't you say to swim? Who didn't you tell him to meet? Where won't you ask him to eat? Where did you tell him to stay? Who said to come back? Who told you to stop? Who asked them to sit down? When did you tell him to follow you? Where did you ask him to drive? What didn't he tell you to do? Who said to take it? When did you tell her to return it? Who told you to work? How did he tell you to do it? I say to him not to do it. I tell him don't do it. I ask him not to do it. Do you say to him not to do it? Did you tell him not to go? Will you ask him not to sit there? Don't you say to him don't eat? Didn't you tell him don't play? Won't you ask him don't open it? Did you ask her not to lay there? Didn't you ask her not to talk like that? Will you say not to stay there? Doesn't she ask you not to do that? Did she say to you, don't eat that? Didn't you ask him not to fix it? Did she say not to pay it? Didn't he tell her not to wear it? What do you say to him not to do? Where did you tell him not to eat? Why will you ask him not to clean it? When don't you say to him, don't study? Who didn't you tell him, don't talk to? When won't you ask him, don't help? When did you tell him not to come in? Where did you ask him not to go in? What will you tell him not to pay? Who told you not to be angry? Who said don't wash that? Who told you not to complain? What did he tell you not to teach? Did you tell him to go? Did you ask her not to do it? Didn't you tell him to take it? Who said to go back? Where did he ask you not to eat? When did she say to come back? Who did she tell you to help? When did he ask you not to go outside? Who said don't sleep there? Did you tell him not to steal it? Where did he say to sit down? Where did she tell you not to drive to? When did they ask you to call her? I say to him, let's go. I tell him, let's go. Do you say to him, let's eat? Did you tell him, let's eat? Will you say to him, let's eat? Don't you tell him, let's eat? Didn't you say to him, let's go back? Won't you tell him, let's do it? Did he say, let's go out to eat? Didn't you tell her, let's sleep here? Will you tell him, let's drive there? Did you say, let's change it? Didn't he tell you, let's meet tonight? I say to him, let's not go. I tell him, let's don't go. Do you say to him, let's not go? Did you tell him, let's don't go? Will you say to him, let's not eat? Don't you tell him, let's don't play? Didn't you say, let's not work? Won't you tell him, let's not read? Did he say, let's not sing? Didn't he tell him, let's not meet today? Didn't she tell her, let's not try? Did he tell you, let's don't bring it? Did you say, let's do that? Who asked you not to go? Who told you to stay there? Who asked you not to say that? Didn't you tell her not to do it? Did you tell her, let's go now? What did she ask you to eat? Where did he say, let's eat dinner? What did he ask you not to take? When did she say to meet her? When will you tell her, let's leave? Did she ask you to forgive him? What did she ask you to borrow? What did you tell her let's not see? Who told him to hold it? Who asked her not to worry? Didn't he tell you don't eat it? I say to him that I went. I tell him that I went. Do you say to him, you want to go? Did you tell him that you want to go? Will you say you have to go? Don't you tell him that you have to go? Didn't you say to him that you need to go? Won't you tell him you need to go? Did you tell him you plan to go? Didn't you tell him you know how to do it? Did he tell you you should go? Did he tell her he went to study? Didn't you say you didn't feel like going? Will you tell him you got to go? Didn't you say you're thinking of going? Won't you tell him you feel okay? Did he say he tried to do it? Didn't he tell them that he felt sick? Did you tell him that it was okay to go? Did he tell you he almost fell? Didn't you say you like to study? Won't you tell him you'll be going? What do you say to him that you have to do? Where did you tell him that you had to go? Why will you say you have to leave? When don't you tell him you like her? Who didn't you say you want to meet? When won't you tell him you have to go? Where did he say he used to live? Who said they are the oldest? When did you say all of them went? When did you tell him some of them are going to come? Who said you are supposed to do it? Where did you tell him you almost fell? Who told you it tasted good? When did he say he had difficulty breathing? Who told you it was okay to take? When will you tell her you're ready to go? What did he say he plans on doing? Who did you tell her you were thinking of inviting? Who told you they quit smoking? When did he say he ended up going? Who did he say he hopes to meet there? Where did he say he enjoys going? Who said they began studying? Where did she say she is going to travel? I told him what I like. I told her where I went. I told him why I like it. I told him when I left. I told him who I visited. I told him how I did it. Do you tell him what you do? Did you tell him where you went? Will you tell him why you like her? Don't you tell him when you study? Didn't you tell him who you met? Won't you tell him how you did it? Did you tell him why you have got to go? Didn't you tell him why you would like to go? Didn't you tell her where you used to work? Will he tell you when he has the chance to go? Didn't he tell you when all of them went? Did he tell you where he'd rather go? Didn't he tell them where he managed to go? Did they tell you what they've been doing? Did he tell you how he got there? Did you tell him you wanted to leave? Did you tell her don't go now? What did she tell you to bring? Did you tell her to be happy? What did you ask her not to send? Did you tell him you enjoyed doing it? Did she say it became expensive? Did you say you had trouble learning it? Did she say he kept talking? Who said to go? Who said not to do it? Who said let's do it? Who said let's not go? Who said that they had to go? Who told you where I went? When did he say he's got to go? What did she say she's been doing? What did he say he's used to seeing? Who did he say made him angry? Did he say she pretended to sleep? Did you tell her not to go to sleep? Didn't you ask them not to go there? What did he say you were supposed to eat? Did he say he was ready to go? What did he say he went to do? I asked him whether he went. I asked him if he went. Do you ask him whether he studies? Did you ask him if he studies? Will you ask him whether he studies? Don't you ask him if he studies? Won't you ask him whether he studies? Did she ask you whether you tried to study? Did he ask you if you got to go? Did she ask you if a lot of people went? Didn't you ask her if all of us can go? Didn't you ask him if that is the most beautiful? Will you ask him if he is thinking of going? Didn't she ask you if you know how to do it? Did she ask you if it was worth studying? Didn't you ask her if she plans on going? Will you ask her if she likes going there? I ask him what he does. I ask him where he teaches. I ask him why he goes there. I ask him when he learns. I ask him who he likes. I ask him how he knows that. Do you ask him what he does? Did you ask him where he went? Will you ask him why he does that? Don't you ask him when he studies? Didn't you ask him who he met? Won't you ask him how he drives there? Didn't you ask him what he ate? Did you ask him why he let her go? Did you ask him when he'll be able to go? Didn't she ask them what they'll be doing? Will you ask her who she's going to meet? Didn't you ask them where they're thinking of going? Didn't you ask them what he felt like doing? Did you ask her when she started to study? Did he ask her where she wound up going? Didn't she ask him what he's interested in doing? Did you ask him what he had trouble understanding? Did he ask her why she made him angry? Will you ask him what he hopes to become? Did you ask him where he tried to go? Options. I ask him whether and a sentence is the same as I asked him and a question. I ask him, did he go? I ask him, does he want to go? I ask him what sentence is the same as I asked him what, and a question. I asked him what did he do. I asked him where did he go. I asked him why did he like her. Did you tell her to come back? Did he tell you what he did? Did she ask you what you plan on doing? Did you ask him if he kept studying? Did he say he couldn't help doing it? Did you tell her there's no use going? Did he say all he does is study? Did you say let's begin studying? Did you ask her if she continued to go to school? Didn't you tell her not to bring it? Who told her to do it? Who asked him not to come? Who told you it isn't all right to do that? Who said he made him do it? Did he tell you he stopped smoking? Did you ask him if he likes drinking beer? Did you ask him what he went to do? Didn't she tell him he should have gone? What did they say they all did? Did she say she was going to buy some of the apples? Did she say she managed to find it? Did you ask him if he needed to get it? Who asked you if you had to go? Who said they were set to leave? Did he say he just came in? Did you ask him if he feels like taking it? Did she ask you if you wanted to drink coffee? Didn't you tell him what you did last night? Did she say she got tired? Did he ask you if you had difficulty finding it? Did she ask you not to call her? Didn't you tell him why you had to go? Did she ask him if she wants to go? Did he say he'd prefer to do it later? Will you tell him what you plan to do? Didn't she say not to take it? Didn't she ask you when you'll be coming back? Did you tell him to forget it? Did she ask you to help her clean it? Did he say he tends to sleep a lot? Did he say she decided to take it all? Did you tell her it tasted good? Did you ask her when she'll be ready to leave?